The objective of the house was to have a pleasant life, and when I studied at university we were told that the purpose of architecture was to make people's lives better, and I was always dubious about that because I didn't live in what you might class as architecture, and I had a really pleasant life. A house doesn't necessarily bring anything, and we weren't sort of creating anything in particular. What we were doing was removing the obstacles that made a life great. And I think the best way to think about the house is probably as a tent. And I like the tent analogy because if you go camping, it's not about the tent itself, but it's about the experience we have with our friends and in the environment around us. And in a way, the tent is an obstruction to our engagement with those things. So what we're doing with the house was trying our best to remove those obstructions. The obstacles are more than just walls, but also things that make our life more difficult, like an enormous mortgage, for instance, which can put pressure on our relationships and things. So the house becomes, instead of about a building that has a particular form or shape or effect, it becomes about how can the building facilitate a life lived here in Western Australia.
So we started building in 2019 and we moved in 2020. It's been everything that we thought it would be. Like, we feel very connected with our neighborhood, we feel very connected with the environment outside. We don't really notice that we're in a building most of the time. There have been some really nice surprises though as well. The biggest one for me, I think, would be the wildlife. Our pond was meant to be some beautiful ornamental pond, and then the frogs came in, and all of a sudden we have these tadpoles and we want to support the tadpoles. We just kind of looked at each other saying, well, I guess we can change our idea of that pond. And so then we started planting different plants. We accepted it wasn't going to be this beautiful ornamental thing. And now we have 4 species of frogs in our backyard. The big surprise as well is when we have these doors open, which we do a lot, the birds are quite bold, and they'll actually fly into the house up into our plant chandelier, because apparently that's where a lot of spiders are living in the plants undisturbed, but the birds have figured that out. So now they'll just openly fly into the house, pick off a spider, and then they'll help themselves out. Having a 3-year-old, it's been really rewarding just watching him be able to understand the environment and the animals and the birds around us, because he has so much exposure to them. Even in a rhyme time, he was trying to correct some people when they said, "What does a frog sound like?" And they all said ribbit. And Jack chimed in and he said no, and he starts making a motorbike frog sound, and we kind of had to take him to the side and say, "You're right, buddy, but they don't have frogs in their garden, and so they'll learn that frogs can sound all different ways." So it's been really rewarding for him as well, I think.
The garden has changed a lot over the years, and I've learned a lot from it. I've learned that the flowers in spring are yellow, and during summer they tend to go through more red colours. I've learned about birds and different species, and I've interacted a lot with my neighbours. So all these things are things that I would have really wanted from the house. When we purchased the property, we knew that there would be water around, but we didn't quite understand the magnitude of it. And then through exploration, we uncovered where those springs were. And they now flow into a little pond, and then out of that is a spout in a little creek that runs through the property. But from that pond, I'm able to irrigate the rest of the plants around. So there's pipes that come out from underneath the pond and irrigate those plants. And that allows us to have a little bit of flexibility about what type of planting we would do. The intent with the concrete pipes was to really blur the edge of the building and allow the space to continue through the glass line so that we always felt connected to the environment around us. And the kind of downside of that is that animals also feel the transparency, and in early spring, very young birds we found flew into the glass. And as a result, we have now added nets in the early spring, and they hang from the edge of the roof and prevent the birds from flying into the glass. After they've matured, it's no longer a problem.
So a lot of people asked us when we decided to have a child how we were going to manage a few things in the property that didn't seem very safe for a toddler. And one of them in particular was the ledge. When we opened the big sliding doors, how are we going to keep him safe? And I think the really interesting thing is that we didn't have to do anything but be vigilant like any parent of a toddler would have to be. It's just about teaching them what is safe and what isn't safe. And so when he was really little, we would always watch him, but we would let him investigate. We would teach him how close he could get, and then we would say, how about we step back? And as he's grown older, it hasn't been a problem. In actual fact, we've noticed that he has much better awareness of drops and ledges outside of this property. So when we're walking along the river, you have a lot of river walls, and he is very aware of how close to get and that he shouldn't lean. And I think that's just because he's been exposed to that pretty much on a daily basis since he was, moving at 8 months old. I think one of the things I've just noticed is there are so many times in a West Australian context when it's really, really hot outside and it's not necessarily pleasant to be outside, or in the winters when it's raining and it's been raining for days. You don't feel like you've been taken away from the environment. You're still a part of it. It's just you're interacting with it in a different way. You still see all of the rain pouring off in streams from the roof, or you see the trees dancing with the rain and the wind. I guess it's because of the house and the way it's been designed, but we don't ever notice the building, really. We're just living our life together. And that's probably one of the most special things about this house.
The reception to the house has been somewhat surprising, and people are overly complimentary, and it received lots of press, I guess. And what surprised me about that was that it doesn't really have anything that you would normally associate with a fancy architectural house. So it doesn't really have a real kitchen, it doesn't have a real bathroom, it doesn't have a real bedroom, for instance. Everything's just kind of under this one roof. And I thought that that was kind of remarkable, that it received so much attention without ever having those things that we normally associate with that attention. And I've wondered whether because it sort of hit a nerve about how we actually want to live our lives, maybe it appealed to people in that way. After moving into the house, one of the things that I learnt is that the effect of a big high ceiling or an architectural effect is fairly fleeting, and that over a couple of days the house becomes a house only. And what is left is your relationship with your family and the place that you live in. So that's become really important in the way that I see architecture. The approach now is that we try and facilitate those things and remove the obstacles that get in the way of those things, as opposed to focusing on what the building is or what effect it might produce on someone. So that's what I sort of see for the architecture, in that a building is an obstacle to engaging with an environment or with people, and architecture is maybe a tool to break down those obstacles.